Cool. Hey there, this is Allie from Women in Sales podcast and the Women in Sales Slack channel. And I'm here with, why don't you say your name actually?
Shikha Bindra.
Yeah. So for some reason, you don't ever want to say someone's name wrong. But Shikha is from Vidyard, which is a cool, really, really cool SaaS company that I actually use here at HubSpot in my job. So we want to introduce her and kind of talk through what got her into sales and why she's in sales, what types of things she cares about as being a woman in sales. And we'll just have a real conversation from here about being a woman working in sales. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Allie. I'm excited. And
Cool.
I read your blog post on how you were using Vidyard, and that's essentially how I got to know about your Women in Sales.
Cool.
Stuff. Yeah.
Wait, that's really cool. For people who don't know what that is, why don't you want to tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, so what Vidyard is a video platform for businesses, and what Allie and her team use is a product called Viewed from us, and it's essentially letting you do one-to-one video communication. So being able to quickly record yourself on your webcam or record your screen and send a message over to one of your prospects or customers so they can actually hear your voice and see you deliver that message versus just a plain text email or a PDF, PowerPoint presentation. So it's really cutting edge and just breaking through the noise of all that email clutter that hundreds of sales reps are sending that same sort of message to your buyers. So how do you really stand out at the end of the day? And that's what Viewed is to help you do.
I agree. I think it's been really helpful, and we just started using it at HubSpot not that long ago. So side tangent on just video in general. So you can see we're doing a video podcast right here, and a lot of people I don't know if they feel comfortable being on video in general, but I think it's like why not? We, talk to people in person in general. So I feel like if we can do something with video and sales, it makes things a lot better.
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to the comfort, a lot of people are so used to the cold calling and being behind an email or being behind a phone that people aren't used to seeing themselves on camera and then putting themselves out there to a point where they're sending a video out to someone and they don't know what's going to happen with it. So,
yep. No, I agree. All right. Well, let's just go over just really quick, like your background and what got you into sales and how you ended up where you are at Vidyard. So do you want to talk a little bit about, when you just starting from when you graduated college actually, and like once you went into sales and the progression that you've taken since then?
Sure. So when I was in school, I did psychology and biology and I did a Bachelor of Science. So it was very different to what most people I work with are doing business degrees and arts degrees. And originally I was doing bio and psych to progress into law school to be more of a criminal lawyer and work in the law in the legal system here in Canada.
Interesting.
Wrote the LSAT, applied to law schools, and while I was in the waiting process of seeing if I was getting in or not, I was like having second thoughts, like, am I going to get in? What am I going to do if I don't get in? Like, I have no other backup plans. What am I going to do?
Okay.
Where we live in Canada, it's called the Silicon Valley of Canada. It's Kitchener-Waterloo. There are so many tech hubs here. There is a ton of startups. There's a lot of incubators, so a lot of great startups that actually sprout from here, Vidyard included. So I thought maybe it'd be a cool way to get involved in the community as a backup plan to work just down the street at a local startup. Well, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I'm going to get in. I don't know what's happening, whatever the case may be. So I started looking around and joined a really small startup, like a 5-person startup. And I did everything from like sales, marketing, support, customer success, product development, anything and everything that really passed by my desk.
Sure. And I mean, at an early stage startup like that, I feel like you have to do what you need to do and you just got to get it done.
Exactly. So that was me, and I was doing that. It's more so an internship to get my feet wet and see what I liked and what I didn't like. And what I ended up liking a lot was the sales and marketing side, just being in front of customers, actually talking to them and providing value with what we were selling versus the product testing and the development and the back end stuff. Felt that was interesting, but not enough to keep me there and keep me happy.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, so now I know that I should be focusing on getting, another gig in sales. And I'm actually developing a gig in sales versus doing 10 different things throughout the day. Yep. So at this point, I started applying to Vidyard. And what they had opened up was a sales development role. With that is all inbound leads and some outbound. And cold calling and emailing to get meetings booked for the account executive. So
let's wait there for 1 sec. So for anyone who's listening to this who is an SDR, which is sales development rep, that's what you were, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of companies call them sales development rep, business development rep. It could be a BDR, SDR. There's a bunch of different acronyms and names for that role. But tell us a little bit about that position and like what you did coming into that role at Vidyard and like how big your team was at the time and what you learned from that.
So I was overall in the company, I was employee 72. And then that team at that time, I think I was the 8th SDR that joined.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were still pretty fresh. We still got a ton of inbound leads coming in. We were swamped with answering and following up with those requests. We honestly just answered all the inbound leads from the different campaigns and events that we were attending.
Okay.
And then also building out those accounts that we felt were awesome. So if we got an awesome lead at HubSpot, well, we were going to spend the rest of our time that day to build out that account and call into the rest of HubSpot. So we were doing a lot of outbound as well.
And how old were you when you started in that role? Just curious. Do you
Oh,
remember? Or
right after I graduated, so 21.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And how old are you now?
23.
Cool. Okay, so we're talking to someone who is kind of fresh into sales. So I think it's actually really important to have all different types of levels and ages and roles on this podcast. So I really actually appreciate the story of like, coming from college and then where you are now as a 23-year-old compared to when you were 21 and the things you've learned and, things you wish you had known. All of that stuff is super important to our listeners and to other women, who might be younger thinking, I want to have a career in sales, but I don't really know what that means. It's really good to hear stories like yours. So, I just wanted to say that. So keep going about that position and like what you did and what you learned and that.
Yeah. So while I was actually interviewing for that, I got a job offer from Vidyard for SDR, obviously, but I also got accepted to a law school that I was actually looking at. So it's like, what do I do? Like I have 2 great offers in hand. And ultimately at the end of it, I decided to go with Vidyard, obviously. But what really helped me make that decision was, where did I want to be? Who did I want to be in 10 years from now? And who did I want to learn from? So throughout the interview process, I actually got to sit down with Michael Litt, the CEO of Vidyard, and he did an interview with me where honestly we just had a conversation. It wasn't him asking me questions about my experience and why I wanted to be in sales. It was just him getting to know me personally and me getting to know him personally.
Sure. And I think at that age when you're coming out of college, like it's really hard to say, well, I don't know what it's like nowadays, but honestly, 10 years ago when I was doing that, it's hard to know like, when someone asks, why do you want to be in sales? You're like kind of saying like textbook answers because you don't really know. You're like, I'm outgoing and I, played sports and I like money. Like you say all the things that you're told to say.
Yeah,
so I really like that you had like a real conversation and not just like, hey, tell me why you want to be in sales, because at that age, you honestly like don't really know.
And especially with the school systems now, like I did a Bachelor of Science. They didn't prep me to do interviews for sales gigs. They prepped me to do interviews for med school, for example. So I had no idea what to say if I was asked the question. And it was honestly just telling them I was intrinsically motivated and I wanted to put in my effort to get a return from it. And I didn't want to work 50-hour weeks to get paid the same at the end of it when I knew I could more. So that was my answer all the time when I was asked that question. And I guess Mike loved it. And I was able to sit down and have a good conversation with him and walked out saying, well, that's who I want to learn from. That's who I want to strive to learn more from. People at Vidyard is who I want to learn more from versus, going to law school for another 3 years and working under, someone who probably won't care about me for the next 10 years after that and then moving on up.
You just felt more at home there and that you would have an opportunity to learn. And I love how you said, your reason for getting into sales is about that you're like intrinsically motivated. I think that's a really, really, really important quality, like especially when you start to interview people and when you start to hire for sales roles. Like if you're not just motivated on your own and your own self, like there's no way you're going to achieve the types of things that like a sales team would want you to achieve. Because you have to have that motivation yourself to like go the extra mile and not have someone telling you like, hey, make those calls or whatever. So that's interesting. So I think that's helpful for, maybe kids in college listening to this who think, what makes a good sales rep? I think that's a very good point, is that if you want you feel like you're just motivated in general on your own, and that you want to be able to make your own money, make your own career path. I love that you said that too.
Yeah. And a lot of it is like using your network. Like in university and college, you have a great opportunity to network with people around you. And I find more and more people are moving into sales careers instead of going to professional careers like accounting or finance, whatever the case may be. So finding people in your network and asking them why they went into sales and why they dropped out of being an accountant is being super beneficial for me and my peers to help understand why, a sales career is so intriguing and awesome, because you're not only learning things about yourself, but you're learning how to grow a company at the end of the day.
Yep.
So it's amazing. I feel like colleges should definitely push it more, but they don't. At least here in Canada, they don't.
Well, that's something else. Like, I think in a couple of weeks, I'm having a professor on the show, kind of talking about that in general, because I think that's really important too, and that's something that I've kind of focused on, is like, why don't schools teach, even if it is a business school or something like that? Like, I studied business in college, and I loved my college, but we didn't necessarily like get taught sales, if that makes any sense. And I think we should have those types of classes. And I'm assuming nowadays, like, there are colleges that do have those, and I bet it will just keep growing. But I would, if there's anyone out there listening to this that has opinions on or teaches sales classes, I'd love to talk to you, because I think we need more of that to encourage more women to get into these types of roles.
Absolutely. And I feel like the schools that do have programs or courses on sales or sales management have been led by more old school sellers. So we still have people coming out of school and talking to me when they're like, oh, so what do you do? Oh, I'm in sales. Oh, so you're just making calls all day and knocking on doors? Well, no, we don't necessarily do that in software sales. So,
oh my God, I love it. Okay. Yeah. So talk about that. Like, talk about the stereotype of sales and like, what it really is.
Like, even when I told my parents, like, I'm going to go and join a tech company and do sales there. And they're like, so you're going to be walking on the street, knocking on doors and selling software? And I'm like, no, that's not how it works now. Like, you don't sell it like you're selling a car. You don't sell it like you're selling a book around it, like a textbook down the street. Like, you're literally finding and building out your territory. You're doing this all through the internet. You're communicating over a phone call, but you're also doing a lot more research behind it. It's not just a smile and dial anymore. And I feel like there's still some companies that are still focusing so much on that versus the smile and dialing in a smart way. So the smart calling. So you're not only doing, like your research, you're also planning your territory, you're planning your accounts, you're building out your accounts, you're building out a strategy when you're in an active deal cycle. So there's so much more to it that I think that's being missed out, and that stigmatism and stereotypes that we all think sales is. So
right. And I think that has to do with, that's so funny, because a lot of times sales is looked at as like, oh, like you said, you're going to go outside and like, walk the streets and go into buildings and get kicked out, like trying to talk to someone. But I think, there definitely are those roles still. But when you think about software sales, I agree that it's a totally different thing. And I love how you talked about the research and like, helping women understand that sales is not just like dialing the phone and making a random cold call. Like, a lot of this is things that women tend to be good at, which is, research and planning and organization, and like thoughtfully thinking through, how do I want to approach this account and why? And that skill set is something that if like women knew that that's part of what this was, I think that more women would join sales.
Exactly. And then the relationship building side of it, I feel like women are great at doing that, because we're great listeners. We know how to listen to our prospect, and we know when to shut up and when to talk, essentially, because we know what to hear, and we're good active listeners, I feel. So I think more and more women, once they get into a career of sales, they'll just see how successful they are. Some of the top reps here at Vidyard are women. So
I was going to ask you that. Like, talk to us a little bit about Vidyard's presence with women in general. And I know you said when you started there, you were like employee 72, or I don't even know if that was the right number, but something like that. Wow, I can't believe I got that. So from then, it seems like it's been 2 years, right, since you started. So talk about that progression a little bit, and then if we can go over, the structure of the company and how many women are in sales and what that system's like at Vidyard, that could be cool.
Yeah. So I was 72 when I started. 2 years later, we're now at 190 people.
Nice.
We've grown significantly, and we moved offices. We've grown our sales team so big now that like there's new people starting every week in sales, which is awesome. So after an SDR role, I did that for about 6 months. I moved into a BDR role, which is a role that's more outbound based. It's all cold prospecting.
Okay.
But I actually built my own role within that role. So I did a BDR role within our current customers. So I did landing and expanding with the account managers, and I would go into our big enterprise accounts and try to build them out and prospect within them after we've already closed them. So built that out.
How did you, just a question, because I think this is important for women, is like, especially at startups and, you know, just in general companies, like finding something that you want to expand upon, or maybe is it really a role yet? Like, how did that come about?
Honestly, I think I saw this potential of untapped pipeline, because some of our best reps back in that time were our account managers finding upsells, and there's only 2 of them, and there were so many accounts that were untapped. So why not have someone in the weeds of it actually looking for more and more pipeline, so the account managers can focus on just the closing side of it, just like what we do with net new accounts with the BDRs and the account executives. So I went to my manager, and I was like, who was also a woman, and I said, listen, I think there's some potential here. I want to test it out. I don't think it'll do any harm on my quota or anything. I think it'll actually help us hit our pipeline goals a lot faster. And then she did some digging, and she sat down with the account managers, and they loved the idea. They loved the fact that there was going to be someone helping them generate more pipeline and ultimately giving them more deals. So I got into the weeds of it and actually started doing it, and it was amazing, because not only was it easier to hit quota, not saying that, you know, it was an easier role per se, but it was just because there was so much pipeline and
untapped potential
pipeline. Exactly. Yeah. That was just sitting there for so long, and nobody really worked on, because nobody really had the time to do it. So
sure. That's amazing that you saw that opportunity. I'm just curious, because at our company, like sometimes you have to prove that something works before you can actually like pursue it. So did you have to kind of like look into it and test it, and then you've moved into a full-time role that way, or how did that work?
So when I first started off in that, I kind of remained as a sales development rep. I didn't get my title changed. I didn't get my base or anything like that changed. It was more of a special project, we called it.
Okay.
So I did 2 months of it. And what we thought it was going to be is, you know, we're going to get a lot of inbound leads from our customers. You're going to be doing a lot of just answering customer requests and getting more pipeline that way. That was completely wrong. What I ended up doing is actually building out the account even more and going into different departments and selling integrations that they didn't have, selling products and tools that they didn't have. It was going in to people who have our marketing tools, but selling them Viewed It now. So like how they can expand their overall use of video, essentially. So I was doing all cold. All my pipeline was cold. So what we realized is, A, this is a BDR role, not an SDR role. So I'm moving up to BDR. And then B, that there is so much pipeline here, and that this is a role that's going to be successful to a point where I'm now moved into an account executive, and someone's in that role now. So it's still continuing on to be a role, and which is exciting, because it's great to see that that role actually was significant and successful enough that they continue to backfill me.
That's amazing. Yeah. So now, how many people is that? Like, how many people do that?
Just one for now. Okay. I feel like more and more people have moved into it once we
more accounts and whatnot.
More. Yeah. Yeah,
cool.
For sure.
Okay.
So in terms of how many women we have in sales itself, when I started off as an SDR, there was 8 of us, and half the team were women. So it was awesome to see how much of a balance there was. Okay. And then when we moved into a BDR role, I was the first female BDR on that team.
That's great.
And more joined overall after I moved to an AE, and then I was the first small medium enterprise AE that was a female at Vidyard. And now we have a second. So super cool. It's still very balanced, because we have SME, we have mid-market, we have key accounts in a large enterprise with our AE split. But there's women in each and every one of those teams. And one of our leaders for our sales team for key accounts is a woman. So
that's great.
Awesome to see the divide and balance here. There's a lot of it.
So have you experienced anything, you know, a lot of articles and things talk about like the bro culture of startups, and, you know, talking about women and the workplace and all of that. Like, is there anything that you've experienced in that, or have you had a good experience, or whatever it is? Like, it'd just be interesting to hear about that, you know, being a woman in sales. It sounds like Vidyard has a good ratio of men and women, but regardless, like, there's still always something there. So I was just curious what you have to say about that.
So when I first moved into the AE role, I was with 4 other men who moved up with me, and I
Mm-hmm.
felt like I was staying in a frat house every day. But at the end of the day, it was still awesome to learn from these individuals, but I totally see the bro culture. I totally see where the frat house comes from, just in the way these guys talk and the way they act, and
Yeah.
the drinking beer, the going out, the partying, the foosball.
And I feel like at that, like usually SDR, BDR type of roles are like younger people too.
Yeah.
It seems like, I mean, I don't think it has to be, but like, it's an entry point into sales. And I think that a lot of times like men might just end up going into that role for some reason. And then you tend to, at that age as a man, you talk about like what you did last night or like girls or, so it's like, it's kind of hard to like, I don't know. It's like, I think it's an age thing, honestly, too.
Absolutely. And no one on our team has, any family that we have to go care for. Yeah, we're all pretty young. We don't get married. We have significant others, but we don't necessarily have any children that we care for. So we have the time to go out and have fun after work.
Yeah.
So conversations like that are always sparkling inside of our team because that's what we do after work. We're not going home and babysitting. We're not taking care of anyone. We're literally going out to a patio after and having a beer. So
and I think that's a good thing. Like, I think, you make really great friends and really great connections that way. And the more you get to know other people in your company, like the more they see you as a real person and not just like your role that you're doing, I guess. And they get to know the real you.
Exactly. Yeah. But definitely bro culture does exist here.
And I think it's anywhere. But I also think that, I don't know, it's hard because sometimes like women, I can even think of examples where like I've kind of given into it myself. I'm really good friends with all of the bros on my team. People even called me like bro just because, I don't know, there's way more men than women working in sales. Usually, like, I don't know, not every company obviously, but for the most part it just is what it is. So it's like, usually like 3/4 of the team is men and then there's like a fourth that are women or even less. And I think it just naturally you want to like fit in and you want to like have friends. And so you end up kind of giving into that too. And I think that's a problem in itself because, you should stand up to things and say like, oh, I don't feel comfortable with you talking about that. But then you don't really want to because you feel, you don't want to lose a friendship or something like that.
Yeah. And it's weird, especially in startups. It's not like you're sitting in your own cubicle. You're literally sitting shoulder to shoulder to all these people. So building that tension out, if it's something that, you might be a little uncomfortable with, but not enough to say anything about or just bite your tongue. I mean, where do you draw that line? Where do you say something? That's always something that
I agree.
I'm sure comes up. Yeah. Especially when you're spending 8 hours of your day every single day with this person you're staring at all day, sitting right in front of you.
Yeah. So what do you, so from here, what do you like envision for yourself from here in terms of sales and your role, I guess? Like, you want to be a manager or what do you want to do?
It's a good question. Since I'm so fresh in sales, I feel like there's so much potential. I've only been an actual seller for a year now, a little over a year. So there's still so much more to learn. So what I'm spending my time doing is working closely with my manager to do things like sales enablement side for my team itself, because I'm definitely interested in sales ops and sales enablement, but I still feel like I have so much more I need to learn in the actual selling role. So
talk about that a little bit. So I'm thinking back to like myself actually, like at your age too. We're 10 years apart, by the way. A lot of people don't know how old I am. I'm 33.
You don't look it.
Thanks. I feel like I look like a child right now, but I could have done a better job with my hair today. So my point is like, I think back to when I was a BDR and then moved into account executive. And I remember I got, offered like, hey, you should be a manager. And I remember thinking to myself, no, I'm not ready for that. Like I literally think about this all the time because I'm not a manager. I'm still a sole contributor and I don't think I'll be a manager at any time soon. I actually don't want that anymore. But at the time I felt, holy cow, like there's no way I can be a manager. I'm not ready for that. I don't know enough. So it's interesting. Something that I've seen with women as you grow, from early 20s to 30, like women seem to think like, oh, I need to learn everything there is to do about sales and become like the best sales rep that I can be before I move into any other role. And you even kind of mentioned that. So it's like interesting because it's a theory I have just from seeing women your age and also being one myself going up through the ranks. Like you tend to hold back. Like if say someone came to you and was like, you should apply for that manager role, you might be like, no way, what the heck? Like I've only been doing this for a year. And I don't think men necessarily feel like that. And I can tell you that that's one thing I've learned is that you always want to take the role. Like if I could go back in time, you want to take those roles early and often, because you know the people who take those early roles in a startup become like directors and VPs and stuff like that. So it's like if you don't do it early, you kind of get to a place where you're older for some reason, and that opportunity is like things happen in life, you know, like maybe you move and now you work remote, or you know, it just is interesting. I think that women tend to, I think it's like before you're 25, honestly, I don't know, I'm just putting a number to it, but you tend to like say, oh, I'm not ready for that. Whereas men, they might get further in their career in the long term because they took those things early in their life. Yeah. My one piece of advice, like to my younger self, is like take those things.
And it's interesting that you say that. So just to give you the dynamic of my team, I'm the youngest on my team. Okay. The two females on my team are the youngest. So we're both the same age. We're a couple months apart, but all the men are 5 years older than us on our team.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe you're right. At this point in my career, I don't feel ready to take that promotion, but you know, doing those special projects to see if I feel like I can do that is what I'm doing now. But maybe if it was someone on my team that was doing the same sort of progression and wanted to go into sales ops and sales enablement, a role would open up and they'd apply right away. Maybe because of the age thing, maybe because they feel more ready, maybe it's because of the male thing.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, for sure. I always, you know, it's not like the manager thing never crossed my mind, but I also run Enterprise Sales Forum in Toronto, and one of the speakers that we had was someone who was a VP of sales, and we had a few other VPs there, and they really emphasized the point that moving from an individual contributor to a manager isn't necessarily a promotion.
Right.
If you don't feel like you'd be a good manager. It's not a career goal.
Yep.
Right? And there's so many people that have been successful people just by being individual contributors. Like they have individual contributors that are 40 plus. Right. And they've been doing sales for the last 20 years and they don't want to be in management because they know where the money's at. They know where they're going to be most successful. So moving to a manager role is not what's going to get them successful. So
I agree. And I think that's a really great point is like, you know, in sales, there are many different parts of sales and of a sales org, and it doesn't always mean like just because you're an AE, you know, the next step is to be a manager. But I just think it's a thing and a philosophy that like just take that next thing or take on that project even. Like, you know how you said you're doing projects? Like I did projects my whole, 20s, like at HubSpot, and it's just so helpful because you become that person who's like, oh, she knows this, she knows that, like she's really good at that. Like you go to her for that. So it's like taking on those little things is really helpful, and that makes you be seen as a leader regardless of if you're a manager or not. You want to be someone who people respect and want their opinion and want to learn from them. And I think that shows when you take on those types of projects and you take on, hey, there's this opportunity that I think like you did, like in those accounts, like the accounts that you guys already had on board and you wanted to dig into them deeper and find more pipeline, like, you know, being inquisitive like that and seeing an opportunity and taking it is super, super important. And I think that shows leadership too.
Well, fingers crossed.
It does. It definitely does. So is there anything, I can ask you questions all day long about sales stuff. Like, is there anything you wanted to tell the viewers or talk about specific to like your journey in sales so far? I know we've talked about a few things like being young and, you know, your career path so far, but is there anything else you want to go over?
I don't know. Like one of the things that always crosses my mind is these powerful women in sales who have families. Like, I don't have any kids. I don't have a husband. So I don't have any other responsibilities outside of myself and my parents, for example. But then there's these awesome women there that have like 4 kids that they go home to every night after battling it out on the phones and crushing out emails and closing deals all day. So it's like, those are the women I want to learn from, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be there at some point. So it's like, how do they have that work-life balance? So
that's great.
I don't know. Do you have experience in that?
So, well, first off, I just got out of like a 6-year relationship, so I felt married. You know what I mean? Like it was a long-term relationship, but we didn't have children or anything. Thank God. I mean, because that would be horrible. But I can tell you this: like a lot of my friends are mothers. At this age, most of my friends are mothers, and those could be colleagues of mine at HubSpot that are in sales. They could be on the account manager team. They could be also just people who don't work at HubSpot that I know who are in sales as well or running companies. I think what you learn is like you have to have, and I'm not a mother, but I can speak for them a little bit, but I think I'll have more people on the podcast that talk specifically to that, like motherhood and how things change. But I think there's so many women at my company who I've watched progress from, we started together and now they're moms, and they still do amazing things like travel the world with their kids, for example, and they still get things done. So I think if you're like that type of person who's like, oh, I'm going to get this stuff done, that's kind of how you are in general in sales, I think. You make it work. And I think if you make yourself, I don't know, feel like, now you're just a mom, but that's just one part of your life, and you have to like kind of figure out how to control all the different elements. But I think you're excited because you get to, like, obviously you're doing this job to provide for your family too. And I think that's exciting, so that you feel, I don't know, it's hard because I don't have kids, but I can think of what I would feel like.
Yeah, because to me, when I think about 5 years from now, when I want to, be a mom, hopefully at that point, it's like, well, am I going to be able to do what I'm doing now and crush it in sales, but also be a good mom? So like these are things I'm thinking about now as I progress more and more. So
have you seen anyone at Vidyard become a mom yet? Like, so come from?
Not become a mom here, but come as a mom of like 2 to 4 children, and they are superstars. So
interesting.
It's exciting to see how they still crush it and every day. And
I think like at HubSpot, when I first started, there was like less than 100 people, and then now there's like thousands, right? And so a lot of the girls that we started with around, I was 25 when I started, now we're like in our 30s, and a lot of people, I'm not one of them, but women have children around that time, right? So I've seen everyone go from, we used to not have like nursing rooms, for example. Now we do. So I think like as your company gets older, you'll just see that women start to do those things, and then you'll learn from your company kind of changes with you guys getting older, if that makes sense. Right. That's what I've seen at HubSpot, and I think it's really, really neat. It's like so cool to see people become parents, dads and moms, like at your company. I mean, a lot of my colleagues on my team are fathers, so they're, they have children and they make it work. I mean, people work from home certain days a week. I mean, certain people work remote. Like I work remote. I don't work in Boston anymore. I work from home full time. And so you just make it work. Like you figure it out. And I think it just takes, I don't know, figuring it out either way. Like how am I going to make all of this work? And it's the same thing with like your job. You got to figure it out. And I think that people in sales typically can do that. And they're motivated intrinsically to like figure shit out. But if any women are listening out there who are mommies or have just become moms, and you want to be on the show, I think that would be really interesting. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because, I can't speak to it myself because I'm not a mom, but I can see what people around me have done. And I think you can do it, because I've seen so many people go from like sole contributor up to like VP level at our company, and they've had children, multiple kids throughout that time.
Awesome.
And they travel with them. They take them to all the different offices. They still do everything.
That's awesome. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that's like a fallback point for women in not wanting to progress their career in sales, for example, and move into maybe a manager or move into, a different role like customer success or anything like that, where it's not as demanding. Your hours are more fixed, your income's more steady. So I know that could be.
And I think at some point in your life, you have to make that decision. Like, do I want more like stability, because sales is not stable at all. Like it's very chaotic. Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. Like, I mean, there's such highs and such lows, like, and you have to be able to ride that stuff. But like at some point, I think you make a decision, like, do I want to keep doing this or not? Like, let me tell you, at 33, like sometimes I have those thoughts. Like, it's like, wow, I've been doing this since I was 21. It's like, what the heck? This is so draining. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know. I don't know what else I would do. I love the process of selling in general and everything about it. So it's like, even if it isn't this like, 9-to-5 job, I don't think I'd do well with that in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's really helpful. I really appreciate your time. I wonder, I don't know if there's anything you would say to women about like what you've learned in the past 2 years, going into sales, and what they should think about if they're thinking about joining a career in sales.
Yeah. And I guess just to women who are getting out of university and college, just not just women themselves, like anyone who's graduating, just get out there and do it. Just get that stigma out of your head that it's going to be door to door. You're going to be making a ton of phone calls. Yes, you'll be hustling, but it's a hustle in a different way. And it's so rewarding because you learn so much, especially at a small company. And you can probably attest to this at HubSpot.
Yep.
You probably learned so much working at a company that small at that point, because you were involved in so many different aspects of not even just decision making, but just in company growth itself. So that reward at the end of the day is something you won't get working as an accountant for 40 hours a week at a top 4 company. So
yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that's something I'm extremely thankful for, honestly. And it's something that, you sit here at 33, which I know everyone thinks is super young, but like, I'm so thankful I worked at HubSpot and that I still work there, because it changed my life. And that's the message I want to send to women your age and in college, like thinking about what they want to do. Because I mean, I wouldn't have the things I have now without being in sales. And it gives you stability. It gives you, financial success, which you wouldn't have in maybe like a corporate role. There's no way you can make as much as you can in sales.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important, because you become your own. No one can take that from you. It's your own. Yeah. It's your own thing, and your own success is what you build for it. And that's really important when you get older, because you never know what will happen. You might get divorced. You might get like whatever. There's things that happen, and you need that type of money. And so I think that sales gives you that opportunity as a woman young to make a good amount of money, because a lot of women, I don't know about you, but like your friends your age not working at Vidyard, like they must make less than you.
Yeah, they're definitely not making that same level of money from what I can see.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize, like, if you're someone who has goals, at a young age, like, I don't know, you want to buy a house or whatever it is you want to do and you care about that, I mean, sales can be a great way to make your own success. And I think that's something else I would tell myself back then. Like, I didn't really think about those things. Everyone always said, you're not motivated by money. And I'm like, not really. Like, I care about it, but it's not something I like actively think about. I'm just thinking about helping my customers and helping my prospects. And in that you make money, and that's like a great thing. But that's, when we go back to like when you go on interviews and they say, well, why are you in sales? Like, what do you care about? Textbooks and old school sales things tell you, oh, it's because you want to make money. But I don't think that's the truth. And I think we need to sway away from that, because at the end of the day, if you care about helping people and you care about figuring out problems, you're going to make money, because you're going to get those clients because of the way you helped them.
Absolutely. That hustle leads to a reward, and that reward is intrinsic reward of being successful and helping your customers be successful. And the bonus to that is, of course, the paycheck from it.
Yeah. I just think that there's so many people that think still that sales is like, just, it's all about money. And I just don't think I don't think it's that way.
No, but hey, hopefully this inspires people to stop thinking about the stigmatism behind sales.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And everyone listening, you can find us at womenintechsales.com. And the podcast is Women in Sales on iTunes. And we really appreciate your time. And I can't wait to do more interviews with people. So where can people find you, by the way?
LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn, yeah.
Shikha Bindra. I'm on Twitter at Bindra Shikha, so the opposite. Happy to chat with anyone who's looking to kickstart their career in sales. Cool. If you want any help on interviewing or where to apply, what kind of roles to look for, And keep in mind that being an SDR or BDR, yes, is an entry-level role, but you don't necessarily have to be an SDR or BDR for a long time before you can progress into not even only sales, but other roles like marketing or product or anything like that. It's a great entry-level position just to get your feet wet in the startup world or tech world.
Yeah, I agree.
So
that's a really good point. And I'll link to your profiles within a post that I'll do on the podcast too. But I think that's a really great point, is like starting out at a company in general, even if you're not sure if you want to be in sales, at least you get your foot in the door and you learn these types of skills early on. And then you can make that decision as to like, hey, do I really like this? Because once again, I feel like at that age, you really aren't sure. And it's kind of hard to know until you do it.
Exactly. And that's a great way to start.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much and have a great day and happy selling.
Thanks, Allie.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Bye, Allie.